gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to express my thanks to Ecuador for their welcome in this beautiful city of Quito. And at the same time, I'd like to extend my invitation to all of you to come to the different but equally beautiful city of Vancouver for next year's meetings on January 16th to 21st. Now, I think if we're talking about trade and growth, it's good to go back to the crisis of just over 5 years ago, when the world could have descended into a calamity as great as what happened during the 1930s depression. And I think the only thing that stopped us from doing that is that John Maynard Keynes came back from the dead, in the sense that the world's economies, under the auspices of the G20, collectively decided to run large deficits equal to 3% of GDP in order to keep up spending and avert a crisis. And they succeeded largely in doing that. And I think the second major issue coming out of that crisis was to fix the world's banking and financial system. And while that is not my topic today, I would say some progress has been made, though the world has yet to come to terms with the problem of dealing with banks that are seen to be too big to fail. But what I would like to talk about today is three themes: dealing with sluggish growth, avoiding protectionism, and promoting trade. On the dealing with sluggish growth, I'm not proposing we go back to the crisis management of the 5 years ago, but I am proposing that we adhere to the Brisbane Action Plan, which under the G20 called for countries to take measures like infrastructure spending to enhance economic growth by 2 percentage points by 2018. So that's an agenda on the table which I think countries should follow to avoid sluggish growth and inadequate employment growth. On the subject of protectionism, in terms of the 1930s, one of the reasons that the Depression was so acute was a series of beggar my neighbor policies where countries competed with higher tariffs and competitive devaluations. And I believe that we must all avoid protectionism, both in the form of raising tariffs and in the form of competitive devaluations. And I think the world has done reasonably well on this front. I might mention Buy America policies as a deviation, but on the whole I think we've done relatively well. And one of the ways in which to avoid protectionism is my third and final point, which is to enhance trade, regional and global trade. I would argue the best way to deal with trade is through global multilateral agreements. But since these are proving to be elusive, countries, including Canada, are turning to bilateral and regional free trade agreements. And I do believe that this is the way to go, as long as these competing regional trade deals don't compete with each other or duplicate each other too much. But as my colleague from Australia has pointed out, there are major benefits to increased trade, not just the avoidance of protectionism, but higher growth, higher incomes, greater job creation. And I would say that for Canada in particular, this is important due to our geography located beside the United States. Sometimes said we are the mouse and they are the elephant. As a consequence of that, some 2/3 to 3/4 of our trade has historically been with the U.S. And while that has been a very productive relationship for Canada, we must diversify and expand our trade and deepen our relationship with countries who are members of this group and other countries outside of North America, especially as the center of the world's economic gravity is shifting eastwards from North and South America in the direction of Asia. So it is extremely important to Canada, as I think it is to all of us, to expand and deepen those trade relationships through bilateral and multilateral arrangements. So to summarize, what I am suggesting is three things: that countries take actions to stimulate economies in light of today's sluggish economic growth, that we do all we can to avoid protectionism, both through higher tariffs and through competitive devaluations, and finally that we work together to grow and to promote regional and bilateral trade agreements for the sake of economic growth and employment and a prosperous, happy world. So once again, my thanks to Ecuador for your hospitality, and I hope to see many of you next year, just over a year from now, in Vancouver. Thank you very much.